Merging architecture and land planning requires the consulting industry to interact with each other. When someone comments how wonderfully planned a neighborhood is, most of the time it has nothing to do with the layout and everything to do with architecture and landscaping. To the civil engineer and surveyor, the home or commercial building is simply a perimeter of the building. This perimeter is not the actual perimeter configuration, but instead typically an imaginary maximum width and depth of a possible building. To the architect, especially on production housing, the lot is simply a rectangle the home fits on. They will assume a home will be built next to it and the main living space will be oriented to the rear of the home. When designing a subdivision or even a master plan community of thousands of homes, the plat of the streets and lot lines are recorded with no recognition of the home interior configuration that will fit inside those lots. If there are architectural standards, those will relate to the facade style, not how the home spaces function with the surrounding open spaces, if there is any open spaces. Lack of communication and collaboration between the consultants is the major reason development advancements stagnate. It is why a site plan of the 1800s, an era where travel was by 1 horsepower, is eerily similar to a subdivision design in 2020. Yet today, it's not uncommon to have over 600 horsepower parked in the driveway. And it's why the floor plan efficiency of homes today are so similar in function to those of the past. In order to evolve and innovate design, we must develop a team approach at initial design stages, where planners and architects and engineers collaborate to provide the best solutions possible for those developers and builders who pay them. Real estate value and livability can increase when architectural design merges with the site plan design. Assuming you would be utilizing these sessions to design more efficiently, more open space can be provided around the homes by reducing excessive infrastructure. At initial concept stage, it's the ideal time for the team of consultants to create a game plan coordinating what goes on inside a home to the surrounding open spaces. This is the inside of my house. I'm standing 30 foot from the wall opposite of me. If it was the interior of a home, townhome, or apartment from the kitchen as the living area focal point, this would be my experience viewing open space surrounding my home. However, we coordinated every room, wall, and window with open views surrounding the home, significantly increasing value and livability. Replicating this on a production housing scale, we provide the consumer with a completely different value proposition. This creates a market advantage for builders of single and multifamily housing that would be difficult for others to compete with. This is a study of a lower-income urban neighborhood collaborating with Jamel Ford of Mobilized Design and Architecture. Every home and multifamily unit has a panoramic view of space from within the living area with the kitchen as the focal point. The apartments use asymmetric architecture to maximize the number of units on the premium view side. Parking and garages are almost completely hidden from spaces people will dwell most of the time. Now let's go to the Chandler in Frankfort, Kentucky. As typical with many developments we design, bay homes explained in Chapter 10 of Proferbia are often used along entrances and arterial streets. Showcase porches instead of garages. Living spaces are coordinated with views from the kitchen to side courtyards and to the vast openness of the front yard. Panoramic views are provided by staggering of the homes. Multi-story residential, this expanded view shed is replicated on upper floors and is the ideal location for a primary bedroom and/or upper deck. Front porches connect to the pedestrian system, and because the living space leads to and from the front porch, it is likely to actually be used versus homes that relegate the living space to the private backyard. The staggering adds to the visual bulk of the architecture of narrow homes, thus adding perceived value to the home buyer. Of course, none of this could be possible without merging planning and architecture or collaboration at the initial concept stage. This is a typical empty nest 40-foot wide house that all national builders offer and most small builders mimic. They are used to maximize density and often at the sacrifice of curb appeal and function. With cove development, there are no rectangular lots. If the side yards are held to a constant minimum angle, we could design the homes to get wider at the front or rear without a density loss. This creates an entirely new value proposition as something unique to the design of cove development, which we'll introduce in a future session. What is essentially the same product reconfigured offers the same living space with a full front porch and additional third garage stall, whether being bumped out at the front or the rear. To experience the difference, let's take a tour of the three options, beginning with the more common product built today. Because of the narrow width, the only window to the front is a den or small bedroom. Entrances are either inset with extra exterior wall construction or long hallways to the only living space at the rear of the home. Note that I did add a corner window to open up the space, but overall the home feels small and claustrophobic. Now let's move over to the shaped home that is wider at the front, and as we all know, curb appeal sells. We have an abundance of windows overlooking the park-like setting of the cove front yards, and entering into the home is anything but claustrophobic. The elimination of excessive hallway makes every room not just seem larger, they are larger. Because the home remains narrow at the rear, more connection to views is to the front and expands to the corner front of the home and to the full front porch. We have the identical square footage with an additional garage stall. Yes, this home would be a bit more expensive to build, but remember, we are reducing the development construction costs by thousands of dollars, which can be applied to the home instead. Now let's go to the home that's bumped out to the rear. In this case, to compete with the more impressive home that's wider at the front, a bit more attention to the front facade is needed. Upon entering the home is somewhat narrow space, but opens up significantly at the rear of the home to the much larger rear yard that's similar to a cul-de-sac lot. Corner windows are added to expand space from the kitchen. As you can see, merging architecture and land planning significantly increases the livability and value of housing. But it's not just planners and architects, but also the civil engineers and land surveyors that must also understand that we are adding more complexity to the simplistic existing process of subdividing land. The increased complexity is made far worse by the already overly complex CAD software consultants use. This is the reason we developed LandMentor 2020, to help the industry adapt to this new era of thinking differently.